Hello everyone, this is Questyen and I am back with another video. This video is going to be a little different than the rest. This is going to be my 20 favorite manga or manga series of all time. So I've been collecting reading manga now for about 3 years, and this is about a year since I've been making manga videos. So most of these series are going to be things that I've read in the last 3 years, so fairly recently. And since I usually don't read a lot of ongoing series until they're completed, the majority of these series are going to be stuff that has already been completed, but there will be some series in here that are still ongoing. So just to start off, this is not what I consider to be the best series of all time. This is not some sort of me trying to make some definitive statement about these series. This is my favorite manga series. So this is my personal favorite series. This is not a subjective what I consider to be the best series. So obviously if there's something on this list or something that's not on this list that you think I should check out, then definitely let me know. But otherwise, you know, if you think some different things should be on a top 20 list, then go ahead and make your own top 20 list and let me know. But otherwise, this is basically just my favorite. So think of it from that point of view. And I'm going to try to have this video not run super long. So you're only going to get kind of short little bite-sized synopsis and discussions about each volume. Or about each series, but if you want to know more thoughts in more detail, go ahead and let me know in the comments, and I can talk about them a little more in depth. But otherwise, you know, if you enjoy this video, if you enjoy my content, just like usual, please like and subscribe. But let's go ahead and get on straight to the video. Okay, so we're going to start off from the bottom. So I'm going to start at the 20th series on my list, and that series is a fairly recent one, and that is Yuzu the Pet Vet. So this is a 7-volume manga series written and drawn by Junji Ito. This was released by Kodansha, and it is a completed series released in English from 2021 to 2022. So let's go ahead and go through the volumes here. The series is about Yuzu, an 11-year-old whose mom has a serious illness, has to be hospitalized. So she goes and lives with her uncle, who is a vet and runs an animal hospital. So over the volumes of this series, she starts out super scared of animals, but with her uncle's help, she becomes an important part, working at the vet hospital along with him, becoming friends with the animals, their owners, and the kind of area that they live in. So it looks, I mean, from these covers, you're probably thinking, oh, this is a cute series, and it is a cute series, but it also deals with some heavier topics that go along with kind of vets and pet owners, such as, you know, having to put down an animal, stuff like your pet getting dementia. They deal with some cases of animal neglect. So all types of different topics that you would deal with at an animal hospital and as a pet owner. So yes, it's cute. Yes, the artwork's cute, but there is definitely some heavier topics being discussed here. So yeah, so just a really well done series. I think the artwork is cute, really fits along with the story. But yeah, any animal lover, anyone who owns pets, I would highly recommend this series to. At the end of volume 7, the creator does mention that they're going to be working on a sequel series, so hopefully that gets released in English. I've never heard anybody mention this series, so I don't know if this was well received or popular in English, but I really enjoyed it, and if you like animal manga, pet manga, definitely give this one a shot. Okay, so at number 19, we have Eagle, the Making of an Asian American President, story and art by Keiji Kawaguchi. This was originally released in English in these 22 small 100-page volumes by Viz, and then re-released in these 5 larger omnibus volumes, which is what I have. This first one doesn't have a number, but all the following volumes have a number on the spine. And so this series follows a small-town news reporter in Japan who is chosen to go to America and document the campaign of an Asian American senator who is looking to run for president. So he pretty quickly learns why he was personally chosen for the job, and is given complete access to the senator and his family, learning their secrets and about his own past as he goes. So Kawaguchi researched US politics pretty heavily when writing this series, and you can definitely show that. You see by this cover here, there's a lot of fictionalized depictions of real people from this era. So there's like a fictionalized Bill Clinton, a fictionalized Al Gore. So if you enjoy political intrigue, if you enjoyed like the early seasons of House of Cards before it kind of got bad, this is a similar feel to that, kind of showing the inner workings of US politics. And as someone like me who's not really that big into US politics, this still kind of gripped me, and it was a real page turner. And you know, after every single chapter or volume, I was wanting to immediately move on and start reading the next one. So let's go ahead and show you what some of the artwork looks like. The art style kind of reminds me of like early Naoki Urasawa, like kind of in like the Pineapple Army era. It kind of has that sort of art style. But yeah, just a really enjoyable story. Ended really well. Can't recommend this enough. We have Eagle, the making of an Asian American president. Okay, at number 18, we have a series, a short 1-volume series called Talk to My Back, story and art by Yamada Murasaki. This was originally released in Japan in the early 80s, and this was just recently published in English by Drunken Quarterly a couple months ago. So this story follows a stay-at-home mom whose husband is rarely home, but when he is, he kind of expects her to do everything for her or for him and their 2 daughters, who are becoming more independent and needing her less. So it kind of follows her life as she tries to find her own sense of self and place, not just as a mother and wife, but just as a human being. So as we're going to look at the artwork, the art is, you know, the backgrounds are fairly simple. It's kind of more simple art style, but the faces are very expressive, and it definitely works well with the story that the creator is telling. I really enjoyed kind of the following of her as she kind of grows more and more as the story goes along. And it is just like in a lot of these Drunken Quarterly releases, we get a nice essay in the back about the life and career of this creator. But it's also kind of an overview of female alt manga creators of that time period. So it doesn't just follow Yamada Murasaki, but it also follows other creators that were creating manga at that time. So just a really enjoyable read. Definitely different than stuff, you know, a lot of stuff that we get in English, but I'm glad that Drunken Quarterly and other publishers like Fantagraphics are releasing books like this in English. So that was number 18, Talk to My Back. Okay, next up at number 17, we have another shorter series. This is Nicola Traveling Around the Demon's World, story and art by Asaya Miyanaga. And this is a short 4-volume series published by Seven Seas, which just recently completed here in English. So here's volume 1. This story follows Nicola, a human child who ends up wandering into the demon's world after her mother goes missing. She meets Simon, a demon who is basically a door-to-door salesperson, and he becomes her caretaker as they go from town to town selling his wares and meeting the unique types of demons in each area. So the artwork in the series is actually extremely good. As you can tell here, there's very detailed backgrounds. I love the brown ink that Seven Seas uses. I don't know if you can tell too much in the camera here, but all of the ink used in the series is like a kind of brownish color instead of the typical black. So, I mean, as you can tell here, the art is just fantastic in the series. I really love the art. The story is great. The 2 leads, Nicola and Simon, they have a great connection, and it's just really enjoyable following them along as they kind of search for Nicola's mother, and then also just kind of following their adventures as they learn about each area of the world that they're in has kind of different varieties of demons. So as she goes along and they kind of learn about the different types of demons in this world, just a very enjoyable, cute series. I really love this one, and I'm looking forward to reading more by this creator, and I really wish this would have gone along for a longer series, but it does wrap up and has a great ending, so definitely enjoyed this one. Okay, so next up at number 16, we have Pink, Story and art by Kyoko Okazaki. This is a one-shot, originally released in Japan in 1989. This was first published in English by Vertical in 2013. So Pink is an 18+ book, so I'm not going to show you too much of the inside. It is a dark comedy about a young woman who works in an office during the day and is a call girl at night so she can afford to feed her pet crocodile. The majority of the story is her interacting with clients, hanging out with her kid half-sister, who she loves, and getting into arguments with her stepmother, who she hates, and then eventually finding a love interest. So let's see if I can find a page here that doesn't have anything inappropriate on it. So here we go. Like Helter Skelter, you know, the art style is not going to be for everyone. It has a kind of messy, kind of a lot different than most of the other manga coming out, even in this period or now. But I think I like this series a little more than Helter Skelter just because of the dark comedy. It has a really dark comedic sense of humor, which I really enjoyed. And thankfully, it looks like we're finally getting another series from this creator out in English later in this year. We're getting River's Edge. So far, we've only had Pink and Helter Skelter released in English. And from what I looked at Wikipedia, she has at least like 20 series released in Japan. So I'd love to get more of her work since I was a big fan of Pink and Helter Skelter. So if you like something a little more out there, you like dark comedy, definitely check Pink out. Okay, so at number 15, we have Robosapiens Tales of Tomorrow, story and art by Torinosuke Shimada. And this was released in Japan in 2018 to 2019, and then released in this one-volume collection by Seven Seas in 2021 in English. So this is a science fiction anthology series, very highly critically rated in Japan. It won a bunch of awards. I don't think it was that popular when it was released here. I haven't really heard. I've heard a few people talk highly of this on MangaTube, but you know, it's not something that I've heard too many people talk about. But yeah, just a really great anthology series. It's a bunch of interconnected stories about humans and robots, focusing on how advances in AI help humans thrive or help robots thrive as human culture dies out. So it dives into what makes us human with, just like you'll kind of notice a theme. A lot of the series I like have kind of unique art styles. This one has a very kind of unique art style. You don't see this type of art. Lots of white area on the page, lots of really dark blacks. But yeah, definitely a very unique art style. And after this one series, this put this creator on a list of I will blindly buy anything they release. If you enjoy science fiction, if you enjoy stories about AIs, I highly recommend picking this one up. At number 14, we have Slam Dunk. This is a 31-volume series by Takehiko Inoue, and this was released in the early 90s in Japan and then in the late 2000s in the US by Viz. So I just talked about this series in my past month's reading log, and this is probably the one that's probably the most well-known series, so I'm not going to go, this one I'm especially not going to go into too much detail about because it's an insanely popular Shonen Jump series. Obviously about basketball. It's about a high school basketball team. A delinquent kid joins their team, and he mainly does it because he wants to meet a girl, but he ends up falling in love with the game of basketball, and it's basically him and his teammates becoming friends and kind of, you know, how they end up working together as a team. So it starts off a little slapsticky with kind of the delinquent humor, but kind of as you get a feel for it, and as I got farther and farther into the volumes, I end up kind of really enjoying the humor more so than I was at the very beginning. Just a very well done series, especially if you enjoy sports manga and kind of the team aspect of manga series. So here's the covers for, I'm just going to show the first 5 volume covers just to kind of give you a feel for the art style. And thankfully this is a series that is coming back into print. It looks like Barnes & Noble and some other places have all the volumes listed as getting reprinted, which is great for people who have wanted to collect the series. I luckily have all the volumes, but it's definitely a series that has been out of print for a long time, and thankfully coming back into print so more people can get back into this well-loved series. Next up at number 13, we have Boys Run the Riot by Kito Gaku. And this is a 4-volume series released in Japan in 2020 to 2021. And then we got it here in English shortly after by Kodansha. So the story follows a transgender high school boy who struggles telling the people in his life about his identity. He meets an outcast boy at his school and they bond over their shared love of street fashion, and they end up trying to start a clothing line together. So the mangaka of this book is transgender, and then when they were releasing it in English, they hired an all-transgender localization team to translate and edit the book. This is the first thing I've read by this creator, and this 4th volume here, quite a bit thicker. When I found out that this series was ending, I actually was pretty surprised, because after the first few volumes, it kind of feels like it's got, that it's going to be going for a long time, but it looks like they had planned for it to end in 4 volumes. So that was a little disappointing. I think it definitely could have gone on for quite a bit longer, but really good art, really good characters, definitely a side of, a story that you don't see a lot in manga, and not a lot of transgender mangakas that we know about, especially stuff coming out in English. So just a really good series if you're interested in street fashion, if you're interested in stories about gender identity and kind of wanting to become, wanting people to accept you for who you are. Highly recommend Boys Run the Riot. Okay, so next up at number 12, we have Cats of the Louvre by Teo Matsumoto. So I really enjoy Matsumoto's work. This is my favorite of his, but everything else that I've read by his is really great. I love his art style. There are definitely more straightforward stories. If you're looking for a more straightforward Matsumoto book to start with, definitely recommend maybe Ping Pong or Sunny, but this one is my favorite, so that's why it's here at number 12. This was released in Japan in 2016-2017, and then in English by Viz in this really nice hardcover in 2019. So the basic story, it's about a group of cats that live in the attic of the Louvre, but it gets very trippy with, you get paintings coming to life, you get cats turning into humans, you get humans disappearing into paintings, all with Matsumoto's, distinct, very surrealist kind of art style here. So like I said, definitely not a straightforward read. I don't know if I would pick this for someone's first Matsumoto book, but I really love this one, and I really enjoyed the mystery and kind of the bond that the cats have and their life exploring the attic of the Louvre. So number 12, we have Cats of the Louvre. Number 11, we have A Drunken Dream and Other Stories by Moto Hagayo. This is a short story collection by one of my favorite mangaka. These stories were released in Japan from 1970 all the way to 2007, and then collected by Fantagraphics and released in English in this really nice hardcover in 2010. So this has been reprinted a couple times, so it should, I think last time I checked it was still in print and available to purchase. So yeah, if you haven't read any Hagayo, this is definitely a good start, a good first thing of hers to read. It kind of mixes in kind of all the different genres that she's known for. There's science fiction, there's romance, there's stories about gender identity. You get a lot of that and more in this. A really good representation of her style and storytelling. The main story, Drunken Dream, is actually in color, as you can tell here, but most of it is in black and white. And like I said, it goes all the way along from the 1970s, all the way up through 2007. So we get a very good culmination of her entire her entire career in this series. And in the very back, we get another, like I mentioned, with a lot of these kind of smaller publishers, Fantagraphics, that puts out this work, we get a nice essay about the Magnificent 49ers, who are a bunch of female mangaka from that time period, and then an actual interview with Hagayo talking about her entire career, and this volume also. So yeah, if you haven't heard or read anything by Moto Hagayo, highly recommend this. Probably one of the best short story collections I've ever read. A Drunken Dream and Other Stories is my number 11 choice. Next up, we have at number 10, A Journal of My Father by Jiro Taniguchi. This was released in Japan in 1994 and then published in English by Ponent Mon in 2020. So Taniguchi is one of those creators who I own all of his work. I've been slowly working my way through. I have a feeling that quite a few more of his works are going to be in my favorite book lists as I've actually read through more of them. But as of now, I kind of tried to just have one on there, and so I went with The Journal of My Father. Ponent Mon, it releases these really nice hardcovers, so we get a really nice hardcover here of this release. And so the main story of this, it follows a man who moves away from a small hometown after school, and he never goes back to visit. So after about 10 plus years, he returns for his father's funeral, and it kind of just, you'll, in the afterword, it's a slightly autobiographical about the creator's real life, but definitely fictionalized. And so in this story, he always thinks of his father as a cold and absent from his life, but after his family members at the funeral kind of share stories of his father's life, he looks at his relationship with his father in a new light. So if you've seen any Taniguchi stuff, really great art style, really great artwork, very detailed backgrounds, as you can tell here. And so there's a lot of flashbacks of his father growing up as his family kind of talks about things that went on in his father's life that his son didn't know about, and how his son kind of comes to terms with his father. Unfortunately, too late to repair that bond, but at least he knows more about his father afterwards. So if you're looking for a good Taniguchi starter book, A Journal of My Father is a fantastic one. Definitely recommend this all-in-one hardcover of that release. Okay, so at number 9 we have, I think it's pronounced Thermae Rome by Mari Yamazaki. This was released in Japan in 2008 to 2013, and then in English shortly after by Yen Press in 3 of these oversized hardcovers. This is getting re-released in English in a all-in-one, which I'm not sure how readable that's going to be because these are already very thick releases. There's a lot of supplemental kind of stuff in here, and so the only thing I can think of is that they're going to take some of that supplemental stuff to be able to fit it. Hope not, but I am, these are mostly kind of out of print, a little harder to find, so at least the story will be able to be read by more people. Let's go to some of the artwork here. Yeah, so here's some of the artwork. And the story follows an ancient Roman architect who is stuck coming up with new ideas, and while at the spa one day, he gets sucked under the water and comes out in a modern Japanese bathhouse. So over the 3 volumes, this happens multiple times. He kind of goes into a spa, some other body of water. It's not something that he can intentionally do, it just kind of randomly happens to him, or he gets sucked under the water. And I've heard some people say this part of the storytelling gets repetitive. For me, I always found it hilarious when he was getting sucked under the water and ending up in Japan. Obviously the first few times, culture shock, he doesn't know anything about this modern society, and he's very weirded out by it. We have some color pages here. But it's just a really fun series. I love the art style. It's got a lot of, like I said, it's a comedy series. It's got a lot of nice comedic aspects of it. In between volumes, the creator actually grew up, spent her late teens in Rome, and so she has a good knowledge of Japanese culture and Italian culture. She has a love of bathhouses. So in between each volume, she has some pages basically talking about the history of bathhouses, her own personal exploration of different bathhouses she's gone to. And it's just a really interesting having this type of kind of supplemental material in this. It definitely helps let an American who doesn't have such a connection with bathhouses kind of let you know a little bit more about their historical importance in both Japan and Rome. So yeah, like I said, after every volume there's basically like a couple pages, and I hope they keep that in and the all-in-one release that they end up coming out with. So yeah, it's got comedy, it's got, you know, it's got some action, it's got romance, just a really fun series. I know there's a Netflix anime. I think in Japan they even released a live-action movie of this. But as far as the manga goes, I don't hear too many people talk about this series, but I definitely recommend it if you're going to pick it up. You know, give it a shot, check it out. Really fun comedy series. At number 8, we have Junji Ito's Cat Diary, Yawn and Moo. So Junji Ito is one of my favorite mangaka. I have all of his releases in English. I've really enjoyed all of them, but Cat Diary is surprisingly my favorite. So this was released in Japan in 2008 through 2009, and then in English by Kodansha in 2015. So it originally came out in this very small paperback softcover version, and then they re-released it I think earlier this year in this really nice collector's edition hardcover. So Junji Ito, mainly known for horror stories. This is a rare autobiographical series from him, and it basically follows him and his him and his wife moving in together, and him now living with her 2 cats. And he's never really had cats growing up, so he doesn't know too much about them. So one of my favorite things about this is that it's an autobiographical series. I was expecting it to be drawn in a different style than his horror stories, but even though it's a story basically about him and his wife and their cats, it is still given that horror drawing style that Ito is famous for. So you get a lot of, as you can see here, a lot of shots of the cats looking cute and then getting very evil looking and very dramatic looking. And then, as you can tell from some of these pictures, his wife gets drawn with these just straight white eyes where there's no actual like eyeball in there, which is kind of creepy also. So if you don't like horror, but you're interested in checking out something by Junji Ito and you love cats, Cat Diary is high up there. I tried to limit my list to having only one creator or one book by each creator on this list of favorite 20. So Cat Diary is easily my favorite. But if I was going to put another one, Uzumaki would probably be the obvious choice. If you're looking for more horror works, then I would go that direction. But yeah, Cat Diary, really cute. If you love cats and if you like Junji Ito's art style, definitely don't skip this one. Pick this one up. Okay, so next up at number 7, we have one of the rare ongoing series on my list. This is Hat Atelier by Kamome Shirahama. This is an ongoing series that started in Japan in 2017 and then started being published in English in 2019 by Kodansha. And so currently in English we have up to volume 9. So this is, obviously, as you can tell by the artwork in the title, this is a story about witches. So it follows a young girl named Coco who always wanted to be a witch, and then one day finds out that in this world that people aren't born witches, but that anyone can become a witch if they know how to draw spells correctly. So this is a secret that is guarded by witches in this world, and she just happens upon it by overseeing a witch who is performing a spell at one time, and so she basically gets taken under his wing and becomes an apprentice witch. And so the series basically follows her and some other young witches as they kind of try to make their way through the society and become full-fledged witches on their own. So when you hear people talk about the series, one of the main things that they're going to talk about is the artwork is fantastic. Like, this is maybe, other than Berserk, probably some of the best manga artwork I've ever seen. Let me show you some of the covers. Just absolutely beautiful artwork. These covers are amazing. Just a really good fantasy story. Great characters. So I've only read through, I think, the first 6 volumes. Like I mentioned before, I usually try to binge a series. There's not too many series that I actually read ongoing, just because I don't have the greatest memory, so I'll often, if there's months in between volumes coming out, I'll often forget what happened in the volume previously, and I definitely enjoy them more when I read like a volume a day and I read through it. So I'm only through, I think, volume 6, but just through this first 6 volumes, this became an instant favorite. I just absolutely love everything about this series. The characterizations, the kind of family aspect of these group of young witches and their teachers. Just a really fun series, but also got some dark elements. I would definitely recommend this for anyone. Some more art here. As you can tell, just insanely detailed artwork. Just absolutely beautiful. Can't recommend this series enough if you're looking for an ongoing to pick up. I've heard some rumors that this was ending in 10 volumes. I don't see any information online where it states that that's the fact, so I'm not too sure. But as of now, this is an ongoing, and we've gotten the first 9 here in English. Okay, so next up at number 6, we have Death Note, story by Tsugumi Oba and art by Takeshi Obata. This was released in Japan between 2003 and 2006, and then shortly after released in English by Viz in regular volumes, and then re-released in these black editions. There's an all-in-one, there's a box set, so an insanely popular series. I'm sure everybody here knows about Death Note. This is one of the few series that I read, or I actually watched the anime first. Not big into anime, I don't watch too much anime, but I'd seen the anime a long time ago, back when it very first came out. Loved it, and then read the manga, really enjoyed it. It's not a perfect series. I would say the first half is quite a lot stronger than the second half, but I still really enjoy it. The basic premise is just a absolute killer premise, revolving around this guy who finds this high school kid who finds a death note, and kind of all the stuff that goes along with it. The artwork is really good and fits the story. The back and forth between Light and L and is just, you know, top tier kind of good guy, bad guy storytelling. And, you know, there's not too much more I can say about Death Note. You know, I doubt there's too many people that are watching this that don't know what Death Note is. But yeah, just a really addictive series to want to go through. Great characterization, great artwork, just a really fun story. Okay, so next up at number 5, we have a manga by my favorite creator, Naoki Urasawa, and that is Monster. So this is an 18-volume series released in Japan between 1994 to 2001, and then in English in single volume starting in 2006. I have all of the Perfect Edition volumes, so these are kind of the omnibus volumes that were released later on by Viz. And so it's going to be very hard for me to describe the story of Monster. It's a very complicated kind of description, so I'm just going to kind of try to tell you a little basic of it. It follows a young Japanese doctor named Tenma working in Germany who saves a young boy, Johan, who ends up becoming a monster. And then Tenma is wrongfully blamed for murder. So he is on the run looking for Johan so he can try to help him. So that's kind of the rough kind of description of what this story of what Monster is about. But if you've read any of Urasawa's work, obviously a lot more stuff goes on. This series is, like I said, 18 volumes, so we get a lot of one of the things Urasawa is really great at is he's really great at going off into kind of little side tangents. So we'll meet characters who will have a few chapters dedicated to them that don't really have too much, you know, at a point you're like, what do these have to do with the main story? But they end up becoming important down the line. So he's great with having a giant cast in his books, and this one is like that. That's why I definitely appreciated this more reading it, kind of binging through it. I can't imagine having tried to keep track of all these characters volume to volume, especially when like some of the characters don't appear for like another 4 or 5 volumes. But yeah, fantastic artwork by Urasawa, a great mystery story, The ending, you know, I enjoyed it. It's not perfect. I mean, I think probably the biggest complaint that people have with Urasawa is wrapping up his stories. But I really enjoyed Monster. It's a great mystery, fantastic artwork, and easily highly recommended if you're looking to get started on his work. Next on the list at number 4, we have, I think this is pronounced Planetes. I haven't seen anywhere where it's actually pronounced, so I'm not sure if it's just planets. I'm going to say Planetes because that's how it looks like it's pronounced. And this is a series by Makoto Yukimura, released in Japan between 2001 and 2004, and then in English shortly after by Tokyo Pop, and then re-released in these omnibuses by Dark Horse. So it was re-released in these 2-volume omnibus volumes. So most people are probably know of this creator by his more well-known current series, Vinland Saga. But earlier in his career, he wrote this series. It was released in a short 4 volumes in Japan. It is a more slice of life sci-fi series about a group of space garbage collectors who clean up all the junk humans leave. This is a great kind of pages to show you the artwork. Who clean up all the junk humans have left in orbit. So it basically follows their tight-knit group of kind of co-workers as they, you know, explore space, live together, work together, while dealing with kind of human topics like the wealth divide. They deal with space terrorism, what life, you know, what they want to do with their lives. I've got some nice color pages there. As you can tell, just really great artwork. I'm really looking forward to checking out Vinland Saga once it completes. I'm going to wait until it's all the way out because I really love this series so much, and I've heard such great things about Vinland Saga. But if you're into science fiction, slice of life stories, you know, it's not as action-packed as probably a standard science fiction story, but I really enjoyed it, and characters really well developed. Just a really great story. Okay, so at number 3, we have Pluto Again by Naoki Urasawa. Like I said, I tried to limit to only having 1 series by each creator on my list, but Urasawa is, you know, there's no way I could keep both Pluto and Monster off my list, so both of these had to make it on. So Pluto, released in Japan in between 2003 and 2009, and then in English by Viz starting in 2009. So this is a shorter 8-volume series, definitely one of the shorter series by Urasawa. And it is based on Tezuka's Astro Boy series, specifically the story, The Greatest Robot on Earth. So it is a murder mystery, like most Urasawa books. There's heavily mystery focused. Follows a robot detective who is trying to solve the murder of Mont Blanc, one of the great robots of the world, and finds out that the other remaining great robots are targets. So like Robosapiens, which I mentioned earlier, this heavily focuses on humanity, AI, what makes us human. And then in the story here, we get very advanced kind of humanoid robots. And then there's also, it kind of shows how they fit in society with a lot of kind of older, standard kind of old style robots mixed in. So you get a lot of mix of kind of AI android robots, and then also, you know, how they interact with the old style robots and how humans treat each group differently. So there's the 8 volumes. Let's go back and show some artwork from volume 1. And so one of the things that I think puts this one above the other Urasawa series for me is because this is a shorter series, it is a lot more tightly paced. You know, with a series like 20th Century Boys, especially, the reason why it's not on my list, I think it has parts that drag, parts where it kind of goes off on tangents that I think could really have helped by being tightened up and maybe a lot less volumes. Whereas Pluto, it only has 8 volumes to come across to tell its whole story. So every volume feels, you know, very important and very, very well done, very tightly created. Fantastic artwork. You don't have to know anything about Astro Boy or Tezuka to read this series, but yeah, if you're looking for a really great mystery story, if you're interested in robots, AI, definitely check out Pluto. Highly recommended. Okay, so next up at number 2, we have a series that doesn't really need any introduction, and that is Berserk. So this is by the late Kentaro Miura, started in Japan in 1989 and was still being released up until 2021 when the creator unfortunately passed away. So it first got released in English in single volumes in 2003, and then a few years ago we started getting these really nice deluxe edition hardcovers. So we are up to hardcover number 11, and these are 3-in-1s. I think one of them might be a 4-in-1, or maybe I'm thinking of Blade of the Immortal, but these really nice 3-in-1s. I can't imagine reading it in any other format than this. I really love the giant pages and the really detailed art style that he has. It's I can't imagine reading it in the smaller releases. I'll deal with the kind of awkwardness of reading a large book. To have this in this really nice big release, so you can really enjoy the artwork. So I mean, most people know about Berserk. This is a kind of dark fantasy series. Got a lot of it's got a lot of adult content, violence, nudity. You're dealing with demons, just a lot of really bizarre and grotesque creatures. We follow Guts, who's the main character, a very well famous, probably one of the main most popular characters in all of manga and anime, who is a mercenary who follows along, ends up joining up with the Band of the Hawk. And so the story basically has him, especially in the first early 4 of these hardcovers, we kind of have him going along with the story of him and the Band of the Hawk. And then as it gets later on, the cast of characters grows out. He ends up having to go up against Griffith. And so I'm not going to get too much into it. This is one of the rare ongoing series that I've actually read these hardcovers as they're coming along. So I'm actually up to date. I've read all 11 of these hardcovers. I really enjoy how the art has grown over the time, over the releases. Let's see if I can get some. Yeah. So the art has grown over the lifespan. Like I said, this Berserk, this series, has gone along for over 30 years, I think. Yeah, 30 years. So, the growth of the creator over this time, the art's, you can definitely see as you're going how the art improves, but the amount of detail that he puts into some of these pages is just insane. Yeah. And we get introduced to a bunch of new characters as it goes along. Some of my favorite characters in all of manga are in this series. So I think I mentioned in my reading log, Shirky, I think that's how that's pronounced. One of my favorite characters in all of manga. I don't think a lot of people really like her, but I really enjoy her. She's a young witch, and yeah, just a really great series. If you like dark fantasy, if you're looking for something action heavy, this is definitely it. If you've read manga, you probably have read this series, heard of it. It's exactly as great as everybody says it is. One of the few times where people have overhyped a series that it actually went over the hype that I was expecting. So that is Berserk at number 2. Okay, so we are at number 1, and my favorite series in all of manga is A Man and His Cat by Umi Sakurai. This is an ongoing series, released starting in Japan in 2017, and then published in English starting in 2020 by Square Enix. So this is currently 6 volumes have been released in English. This is a story about a widowed older man who, after his wife's death, adopts a cat, and instead of going for one of the cute kittens that are popular, he instead chooses an older, larger, less cute cat named Fukumaru. So the early volumes kind of focus on him learning about being a cat owner. He's never been a cat owner before. So it's about him and his cat becoming a family. We get stories that are from the cat's point of view. We get stories that are from the owner's point of view. And it is just a really cute, heartwarming series. As someone who owns cats, who loves cats, this series was kind of made for me. I've heard some complaints about this story, that it kind of goes from being a story, a cute story about a man and his cat, and kind of starts getting more into stuff with his coworkers and stuff less about the man and his cat. But I've kind of seen that progression the whole way. I mean, even from the first volume, we learn a lot about his coworkers and his you know, how they really enjoy him, how he is as a teacher. So I've really enjoyed the progression of the story as we've gone from just being about a man and his cat to showing other aspects of his life outside of his cat. And as a cat lover and pet owner, it shows this series, one of the things that I love the most about it, it shows how much emotional support a pet can provide and, you know, how important they are for our emotional well-being. So if you love cats, if you love animals, if you're looking for a really heartwarming series with really great characters, I can't recommend A Man and His Cat enough. Okay, so that was it. That was my 20 favorite manga of all time. Definitely a lot of series that I recommend for people to check out. A lot of series that I don't hear a lot of people talk about that I wish more people would talk about, but also a lot of stuff that everybody knows about. So I definitely feel like I have an eclectic, you know, variety of manga that I enjoy. So like I said at the beginning, if there's something that you think I will enjoy based on my list, let me know. There's some obvious ones, obviously Vinland Saga, since I liked Planetus so much, definitely going to check that out once it ends. But yeah, that was my list. I really enjoyed making this. Please like and subscribe, and everyone have a great rest of your day.